Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Friday, October 23rd. We're in week 7 of the NFL season. This is the DFS episode of the podcast. I am Scott Jenstad, joined as always by Andrew Laird on Friday mornings. Andrew, how are you this wonderful Friday?
I'm good. This is a bit of a wacky slate for a variety of reasons. And I warned you yesterday as we were slowly getting ready for this podcast that I'm going to need a lot of help this week because the first runs of a few of my cash lineups seemed like they were filled with disasters. And so I'm hoping that our conversation here will help me as well as everybody watching and listening.
Well, I hope so too. Last week was my first kind of frustrating week of the season. The season started out really well, and I like to talk about things I do well and things I got right. Last week was a tough one. The Matthew Stafford 3 rushing touchdowns for Detroit was just miserable.
What was
that? All teams, right? You didn't expect that. And then the T.Y. Hilton stuff, I liked him as kind of a flyer, get in there, and he scores in the second quarter. I'm like, all right, here we go. They're starting to use him. He was getting some looks, and it was called back on a penalty. I'm like, oh, that's no good. But all right, they at least use him. Next series, 25-yard catch for Hilton. They called a bad pass interference. I think it was on Pascal maybe. And then this didn't go to him again. So it was one catch for 11 yards. But I was watching the game, and I was like, oh my, he was involved. He was active early, and just it fell apart. So it was a tough one, but that's kind of the world of DFS. You're going to have some weeks that are really bad blanks, but we had some good calls in there, but the T.Y. Hilton one was especially frustrating.
And of course, that was the week that Rivers threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Right. And you would, if I told you that, you'd be like, yeah, I would lock in T.Y. Hilton and keep going. And it just seemed it
was Marcus Johnson and Zach Pascal all day. It was quite fun.
It just seemed like the guys in the Rivers was never a consideration for me last week, and it seemed but he was in that range with Stafford, but we just like Stafford so much that there was just no consideration for me for the other guys, and it just felt like everyone else in that group did well except Stafford. And of course, I mean, if you told me that was the first time that the Lions had 3 rushing touchdowns since Barry Sanders, I totally would have believed you. And yet,
I would too.
Oh man,
and then you get Matt Ryan winning tournaments after he had 1 touchdown pass over the 3 prior weeks or whatever it was. It was a little bit of a weird week. I mean, Derrick Henry, obviously, if you didn't have him, you were kind of dead in a lot of games. And it was a weird week of there were some guys that went crazy and then a whole bunch of guys who did nothing. It was in season long leagues, scores are really, really low because there weren't a lot of guys that went off, but in DFS, the scores were crazy high because the guys who did go off, people had. It was a strange week of football.
The Derrick Henry thing was particularly tilting for me because I pretty much had him in my cash lineup all week. And I don't know if it was Saturday or even Sunday morning, I switched to Mike Davis. And it's weird to have a 1v1 be so detrimental. And obviously Henry had a huge game and Davis didn't. And Davis was more popular in cash than Henry anyway. But it's to have that one decision completely make or break me. The nice thing about cash games is that you don't need a perfect lineup in order to cash. And yet it was literally just the difference of Henry. I wasn't going to play Henry over Alexander Madison, which obviously results-based viewing makes it look really stupid. But that decision ended me. I would have been perfectly fine if I stayed with Henry. I just made one change. I don't think I changed anything else. And yet that's what did it. And so looking at this week, it's I had many more guys that I kind of wanted to consider. I think there are so many ways that you can go this week, and I kind of hate all of them. And so it's really tough.
That's a good start.
I actually think it's a better GPP week. I think building GPP lineups, particularly with stacks and runbacks, make a lot more sense than the cash games this week, just because there are a few places where it's kind of obvious people are going to go, but the range of available players at each spot means you can really make some very different lineups, which only leads you to more decisions, which is generally what I try to avoid. I want to have as few players in my pool as possible, and it just seems like there's so many this week.
Yeah, so let's jump into the overall slate. We have 4 teams on bye real quick: Indy, Jacksonville, Minnesota, Tennessee. So, kind of a group that you're like, oh, well, I'm not really missing too much on there. I mean, Minnesota maybe, but the rest of them, obviously, Derrick Henry. But I have that wrong, don't I? Because Derrick Henry's on the slate.
Yeah, he's on the slate.
It's Baltimore, not Tennessee, because of the COVID shift with the Steelers-Ravens game. And then Thursday night we had the Giants and Philly, which was just a horrible horrible game to watch. I watched a bunch of it.
Classic
was like
NFC East, man.
It was close but terrible, and Daniel Jones like fell down on the sprint, which was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But
my favorite was the Eagles tweeted something out like first place, and they're 2-4-1. It's like,
yeah. My favorite was like it's like middle of the second quarter. Jeff Erickson, who we both work with, tweeted something like, this game's actually not that bad. And like the next 4 plays were like fumble, 29-yard missed field goal, and he just like it just the responses to him were classic.
Thanks,
like,
Jeff.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Jeff. You ruined this game for us. Now we have to go watch the debate. It's great. Then we have Monday night. We have the Bears at Rams. But the big story of this slate is that it's gone from an 11 to a 12-game slate. We have the Raiders and Buccaneers game moved from Sunday night to Sunday afternoon, so it wasn't like a standalone game due to the Raiders' COVID issues. And that game, sounds like Adam Schefter tweeted this morning that all the Raiders tested negative. That game's still on. Still may get pushed back, but on right now. And then the Cardinals Seahawks game, which is like one of the bigger games on the slate. We have Wilson and Kyler. Got pushed to Sunday night. There was a lot of talk that maybe they take that off the slate, but at least DraftKings and I think FanDuel also have left that on the main slate. So we've got kind of a throwback to 2016 where we got the all day slate rather than the afternoon games ended.
I always loved how there was such a negative pushback to it when they made that decision to not include the Sunday night games, right. And then it took me like literally one slate to be like, oh, this is great. Like I don't have to wait. Like I usually don't watch all of the Sunday night game. And so it's going to be weird because that game's obviously going to be really popular. I mean, it has a 75 point total if I saw that correctly. Maybe it was 175. But like that's like you're going to finish the second wave of games, which is usually the last the end of it, and really have no idea where you stand because that next game just is going to have so many people in it that I don't know. Like I'm going to sleep on Sunday night having no idea how I finish.
And with it being late game, it even pushes up those percentages a little more because people love to have that late hammer. And it shouldn't enter your thinking, but you know that it will for a lot of people.
Yeah, everyone knows that you get 20% more points in the late game.
There's gonna be people that have like 5 players in that lineup.
Sure,
it's gonna be, and you're gonna have like the people are gonna have like 50 points going into that game, and suddenly have 170 points. So it's gonna be, it should be pretty interesting. But we've got we got 6 games that are a 50 point or higher total. We have Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit, Atlanta is 56.5. Carolina, New Orleans is 51. New Orleans 5-0 on the over in their games. So all 5 of the games have gone over on the schedule so far. Green Bay at Houston's 57. Seattle, Arizona, we mentioned, is 56. Pittsburgh, Tennessee, which you never think of as a high-scoring game, is 51.5. I think we're obviously seeing the NFL changing a little bit this year with more offense, less defense, but that's 3 games with a 56 or over. I know that as long as we've been doing the podcast, we've not had that many games that high.
Yeah, which, like I was saying, like it's a great GPP slate because I think people are going to gravitate towards that Seattle-Arizona game just because it's so – it's expected points, but like obviously it's not even the highest total. So like if you can actually somehow get lower ownership on the highest total game, it's like that's a wacky situation. But like any of those games could be the highest. Like so it's not like
for sure.
just because Packers, Texans, or Seahawks, Cardinals are the top 2. Like there's easily other games that could have more points in it. It'll really be the surprise if like. I was going to say the Jets, but it's definitely not the Jets. But like if Kansas City, Denver ends up with the most points, like Patrick Mahomes is in the game, like that one could have the most points too. So like there are a lot of ways you can go in GPP.
Yeah, and then for low totals, we now have the 38, 39, 40 that we used to have in the old days of 2019. We have Dallas and Washington's 46. The game you mentioned before, the Jets and Buffalo's 45, and the Niners and Patriots is actually 44.5. The crazy thing about the Buffalo game is that over/under is like in the mid 40s. Buffalo has like a 30 point implied total. They're huge favorites. I think they're 13.5, 12.5 point favorites in that game. The Jets have not covered a spread yet this year, which seems impossible considering they're big underdogs every week. But still haven't covered a spread. Andrew, what's going on in New York there?
Usually scoring points helps covering the spread. So they just don't. I mean, they're the worst team I've ever seen in my entire life.
The funny thing is, like, you're saying that, but there's nothing hyperbolic about that. Like, they actually might be the worst team I've seen, at least in a lot of years.
It's they're bad everywhere, and so it's as simple as that. They're horrific. The Bills are very good, and although they obviously look terrible in their last game, but playing the Tennessee Titans is a lot different than playing the Jets, and so they're absolutely horrible.
It's It's rough for sure. So let's jump into the running backs. We still have no Christian McCaffrey on the slate. He's sounds like he's gonna be out one more week. Alvin Kamara is the top price guy on DraftKings, 7,900 there. One of those things. Kamara is obviously really good, and obviously you add in the Carolina matchup, and it just everything boosts way up. You always like a running back against the Panthers. Good game script. They're favored by 7.5, so you like that for a running back. A high total, you like that for a running back also. Kamara just kind of checks everything right now. He's got 8+ targets in 4 of their 5 games. He doesn't have a lot of carries, though, which always it boosts the risk a little bit. You risk those goal line carries. Latavius Murray probably gets those. 13 or fewer carries in 4 of their 5 games. The Panthers actually held David Montgomery fairly well last week, but he still had 97 total yards. We mentioned Todd Gurley. Yeah, exactly. Todd Gurley had 121 yards, a touchdown the week before the Panthers. They allowed 6 rushing touchdowns the first 2 games, only 2 in the last 4 games. They have kind of shut down they put the hole in the dike a little bit. But are you in on Kamara this week, or the other guys you like more below him? Let's start at the top with Alvin.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really popular. There's if he's not the most popular running back, he's going to be second. We'll get to the other guy that I think is going to be up there, but. Like you said, he checks all the boxes. The only one he doesn't is obviously the goal line carries, which it's not like he doesn't get them at all, but he's certainly not the guy that we expect to get a bunch of those. But obviously Michael Thomas's situation, it doesn't sound like he's going to play. Or at least he didn't practice yesterday. He now has a new injury as well. Somehow you get injured while rehabbing, which I guess happens. I don't think he got it in the scuffle that led to his suspension, but. If he doesn't play, then obviously we like Kamara more because Kamara sees an uptick in targets.
Right.
Obviously, you were mentioning how many he's gotten. And so, yeah, I think he's going to be really popular. Just paying that much for potentially 2 running backs. The other one I won't beat around is Aaron Jones. Packers obviously have that. They're in the game with the highest total. The hesitation with Jones is always Aaron Rodgers. It could always be a Rodgers game. But they're favored at home at Houston. And so, if there are a lot of points in that game, then Jones could certainly be there. Jones has the usage is always the hesitation for me in terms of, and it's kind of similar to Kamara, which is weird because, neither of them get 25 carries a game like we see with Derrick Henry. But I think those 2 guys are going to be pretty popular. And it's just a matter of whether you want to build with both of them because they're pretty expensive, but which forces you to have to pay down at other spots. But in cash games, generally people are willing to do that.
Yeah, and the Aaron Jones thing with Houston, they're just getting thrashed by running backs.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, we mentioned earlier, we were talking about last week's slate, but he had it against Houston. He had 212 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Did he have a good game? I don't remember.
He had a little bit of a good game. Dalvin Cook had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against them in week 4. Houston's allowed 3 running backs over 130 yards. Usually we kind of you look at 100 yards as kind of a round number, but over 130 yards to an individual running back 3 times in 6 games is just a lot. And you mentioned with Jones, rough game last week. He had 10 carries, he had 5 targets, but they were trailing Tampa Bay the whole way. He did score, which he tends to do almost every week.
Every time.
7,200 though. I was a little bit surprised he was that low. I kind of thought he'd be up with Ezekiel Elliott and Alvin Kamara. I think pricing him down at 7,200 makes him pretty easily the most popular guy this week. I think that he'll be more than Kamara just because of the price difference.
Yeah, I've seen some projections that have him above Kamara in terms of popularity, so I think it'll be them. It's just it's not like Zeke has a bad matchup. They're at Washington, which he's cheaper than Kamara but more than Jones, and then obviously we have Henry, but Henry against Pittsburgh is probably one I don't think you need to, at least in a cash game. I don't see why you would put yourself in that situation when you have these other guys we're talking about. But yeah, I think Kamara, Jones are definitely where a lot of people go. And if you play, I get playing both as well because we don't really have, I hate calling them free squares, but we don't really have cheaper guys how everybody went to Boston Scott last night, which never works, and yet we keep doing it. But
hey, he catches a touchdown with 30 seconds left to make it work.
That's right. A wonderful bailout touchdown there. So, there are other guys, one of which is one of your favorites in Kareem Hunt. I think he could be popular.
Love Kareem Hunt this week.
Yeah,
it's kind of the last stand of Kareem Hunt for me. Last week was really frustrating. I kind of went with everybody's playing these guys in the 7 right around 7,000. I'm going to go a little bit different and go with the tough matchup. I thought he was going to catch pass. They just got so blown out that he just didn't matter. It was a call. It was a call that hurt. I had him and Henry on my main team, and if I had someone else and Henry, it would have been really nice. But Hunt was like, oh my, what do you have, like 4 points? It was like a really low. It was a crazy low total. But,
yeah. So like I'll be honest, my first cash build had Kamara, Jones, and Hunt, and I was like, let me just see if I can start from here. We kind of joke, team jam them in, like probably would be Kamara, Jones, and Zeke this week, but I don't see how you make that work. But like my first one was to see if I could make those three, and I'll be honest, I didn't really love what I came up with, but I also haven't completely ruled it out just because I'm not sure, at least from a true like opportunity perspective versus their price, I'm not sure that there are three better guys.
So Zeke's interesting. He's 7,800 on DraftKings. Weird season, obviously, for him so far. He's lost 4 fumbles, which is, not him. Their offensive line is a mess right now. They both offensive tackles are out for the season. Zach Martin didn't practice yesterday, so that would be like 3 key parts of the offensive line. I know that Zeke is the volume's there, the touches there, the goal line's there. It's all huge, but this offense looked, obviously it's one game, but they looked really different with Andy Dalton playing quarterback. They just looked like a not that team that's going to throw up 38 points at any point. The efficiency is limited is not great for him. The upside is kind of limited. He has to score, I think, to work. I don't see like a game where he's going to break off a bunch of runs like Henry did last week, or even get like 150 yards. You just don't see that coming. The one positive he had 10 targets last week. So in a game where they were trailing, Dalton dumped off to him. But I don't know, in a game against Washington that I kind of think might be a little grosser than we think. I don't know. It's I can't pay 7,800 for Zeke this week with the guys around him. I get it. In a GPP, it's probably, this is a week to get Zeke, at a really low percentage because everybody's going to have Kamara and Aaron Jones. I think Zeke will be around 10% owned, which is, for someone like that talent is always great. There's a lot of things that are weird with this team right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I felt like, because I played Zeke in the first few weeks, and I felt like he was having the opposite season of Jordan Howard. That Howard was scoring like 10. I thought he would end up with 12 touchdowns this year on 15 carries, and Zeke would have 150 red zone carries and like 1 score. It just felt like, just like you said, like he has to score. And the other frustrating thing is, I'm not sure. I'm trying to pull it up here quickly. Like, yeah, he hasn't had a 100-yard game yet. Like he gets the total yards are there, but like the bonuses are helpful on DraftKings. And so to have games
to be fair, he does have 89 plus yards 3 times. So, but he's been close. You mentioned that, but like, there's no like 125-yard games. Like we just use 100 as a number, but there's no games where he's going off at all.
Yeah, well, we use 100 because we get more points for that. Like we get,
that's true too.
At least on DraftKings. But like, yeah, games of 89, 91, and 96. Like, come on, dude. Like, come on. But like you said, he gets in the end zone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't see a reason. He falls in the same thing as Henry. Like, I get it that he's very good, but I'm not sure you necessarily can make like a very strong argument that he's better than Kamara, Jones, or Hunt this week.
Yeah, Henry's 7,500 on DraftKings. I'm not playing against Pittsburgh myself off the big week. I fully acknowledge that Derrick Henry can go off anytime, but not the week that I'm paying for it. You mentioned Kareem Hunt. He's 6,800 on DraftKings. Hasn't really done a lot with his 2 starts. He scored against Indy, but he played Indianapolis and Pittsburgh, 2 really good defenses. And in a year we don't have very many good defenses. They're 2 of the better ones. But last week was ugly. He has 13 carries for 40 yards, 2 catches for 17 yards. So whatever that is, I mentioned 4 points, like 6.3 points or whatever it is. But now he gets the Bengals. This is a total shift. The Bengals are allowing 5.2 yards per carry. Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were 32 for 210 and 3 touchdowns combined against Cincy in week 2. Should be a way better game script. They're not going to be down, 45-0 at halftime, whatever it was last week against Pittsburgh. I realize I'm exaggerating, but I think this is the week for Kareem Hunt. I think 6,800 is a really good price. He's going to be a cornerstone for me this week.
I was kind of hoping you'd do the total opposite and be like, this is why I'm not playing him in this perfect matchup. But like you laid it out, like I think that's why there's every reason. There are plenty of reasons to play him this week. They all make sense. Really, the only reason not to play him is you're convincing yourself that one of the guys below him is better for the price. So like we have guys like Chris Carson, who buying into the Seahawks running game seems silly at this point, which was like crazy to think of last year.
Of course, yeah.
We've got Joe Mixon against the Browns if he plays, Josh Jacobs and Ronald Jones in the same game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is ridiculously cheap after that monster game that he had last week, although the matchup against the Broncos run defense isn't great. But like I feel like those are the guys I I guess we need to throw in Todd Gurley or Jerick McKinnon, because like those guys also could have like really good games. So it's just a matter of like, it is the $300 to $1,000 in salary from Hunt worthwhile, or the possibly $2,000 from guys like Kamara or Aaron Jones.
Yeah, and there's actually two guys right under Hunt I wanted to ask you about. The first is Mike Davis. He's 6,600, and he kind of his first down week. He did score a touchdown, but didn't really do a lot. He was 18-52. He only had two catches. The key on him was the targets. He only had 3 targets. Yeah. We talked about the last couple of weeks how he was kind of filling that McCaffrey role. Not as well, but like the ton of targets, the check downs. Still played 60 snaps. He's still the guy this week. Christian McCaffrey's not playing. The price dropped after one bad game. He's down to 6,600 here. I think he was 7,000 last week. Tough rushing matchup, though. New Orleans is really good against the run, 3.6 yards per carry. But, his value is out of the backfield catching passes, too. Do you think that we see Mike Davis popular again? Do you think people will jump off him after the bad week? Where do you think he slides in at 6,600 with a lot of guys around him that we obviously like?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the guys around him are the reason why he won't be that popular. I think you could, Zeke, Mike Davis in your backfield to have, very low ownership on those two guys. Those guys could have huge games. And so, I think he makes plenty of sense. I just don't see my own personal cash builds. It just seems like if you have Kareem Hunt for 200 more, it's just the situation is so much better. But yeah, you could give Mike Davis one last hurrah.
So the one guy in here that I think is really interesting that I think is going to fly under the radar because of all the guys we talked about is James Conner.
Oh,
he's 60.
Not the James I thought you were going to say.
Oh, all right. James Conner, 6,700. He has a touchdown and 18-plus touches in the last 4 games. He's kind of done it quietly. Last week, he was 20 for a buckle, 1 a touchdown against Cleveland. Hasn't topped 5 targets in a game. He only had 1 last week, but they were up big against Cleveland. You're not really going to dump it off to the running back in that situation. But Tennessee's quietly, for all their wins, they're allowing 5 yards per carry to running backs. I think this is a pretty good Conner week. I don't like how Ben Roethlisberger looks, to be honest. Claypool's doing well. We're going to obviously talk a lot about Deontay Johnson a little bit later. Because I'm me and that price is absurd. I think James Conner is really sneaky this week. I think that he is someone that gets a ton of volume, gets all their goal line carries, and I think he's going to slide through at 5 to 7% in a week where there's Davis, there's Hunt, there's Jones, all the guys we talked about is Kamara. I think James Conner slides in at a much lower percentage ownership than he should be.
I think that's a great call.
I like him.
That's fun. Yeah. It's the worst part about all of these guys is that they could have very good games, but obviously they're expensive. And so you get kind of the differential play from the other guys, the other expensive ones you're getting. But for tournaments, at least, we always like to have the huge upside of wide receivers. Just, it's a little easier to get huge games out of wide receivers.
Right.
But yeah, I guess Conner could certainly put up a 40 in that situation if he really goes off.
Yeah, he'd probably have to score 3 times to do that because he's not really a guy who's going to break off a 94-yarder like Derrick Henry. But I think that I think the floor is obviously really good, and obviously in a tournament, you want more than that. But I think the ceiling's pretty good too. I think that at 6,700, and I think in the percentage, I think he plays really nicely this week. You mentioned CEH, 6,100. He dropped $600 priced because they played on Monday night. I assume that DraftKings on Sunday night was thinking, oh, Le'Veon Bell's playing this week. Let's drop his price. And then he goes, 26 for 161 against Buffalo. And it was a weird game. Yeah, he still can't score a touchdown. That was maddening. But I had him in the showdown. We were talking about the Monday night slates and all that. And I had him everywhere, and he couldn't score a touchdown, but still really good. The interesting thing in that game is it was clear that Buffalo's defense in that game was let's not let Patrick Mahomes beat us. Let's let them run the ball and see what happens. You see teams starting to do that. I think there's the 49ers tried to do that in the Super Bowl. It didn't, it worked for 53 minutes of that game. It's if we just make them run the ball, make them run clock, you can't stop Patrick Mahomes, but at least you can slow him down a little bit and give them looks on defense that they're I have to run the ball in the situation. All right, well, you're going to get 6 yards of this play, but the clock's going to run. You're not going to get as many possessions. You're not going to hit the 70-yarder. Buffalo clearly did that, and CEH took advantage. I think you saw the talent with CEH on Monday night. He looked really good. His cuts are impressive. impressive. Denver has been good against the run, but they faced the Patriots, the Jets, and the Buccaneers last 3 weeks, teams that don't really run the ball a ton, although Ronald Jones is the one exception there. James Conner had a good game against them early. Derrick Henry had a good game against them in week 1. Where do you fall on CEH? 6,100 seems really low when you look at the first time. I guess it maybe depends how you build if you want to play Kansas City, the Kansas City pass game. But where are you on CEH with Le'Veon actually being active and maybe playing this week?
I'm out.
You're out.
Simple as that. Yeah,
that was easy.
And
I'm out. All right.
I just don't see a reason to go there. Do you think
Bell gets the goal line carries this week?
No, I think they throw it to Kelsey.
There's that too. If they run it, I kind of think Bell gets it. If they run it inside the 5, I think it's Bell. I think they've had 6 weeks of Hilaire not doing much. And I don't know how much of that is real. How much you look at some of those plays, like he pretty much took one step and got tackled. Like there was not a lot. It's not like he's missing holes. It's not like he's pulling, doing that. But I don't know if they're going to Le'Veon's going to play a little bit. If they're going to get him involved, it seems to me like red zone might be the time where they decide he's pretty useful right now.
I guess I just don't I think Ronald Jones is so much better in that matchup for slightly more, literally $100 more on DraftKings. And so, Edwards-Hilaire isn't up there for me.
Okay. Let's go Ronald Jones. He's playing against the Raiders. Now that game is on the slate. It's confusing me. I almost called them Oakland. I did that pretty well. I avoided that. 100 yards rushing in 3 straight games. The Raiders are allowing 5.2 yards per carry to running backs. They're pretty good against Hilaire in week 5, but New England ran wild on them right before that, and Kamara went off a couple weeks before that. So they clearly can be had on the ground. They're using Jones a ton. Fournette might play this week, but I think if he does, it'll be pretty limited. Last week was interesting because they were up so much on Green Bay that they didn't throw the ball. They just kind of handed off to Jones a lot. But he's clearly the guy right now in an offense where you've got 3 or 4 weapons in the passing game you have to cover. It's a pretty good setup this week for Rojo.
Yeah, I think Fournette is the only hesitation. He practiced fully on Thursday, I think, which good for him, but that kind of sucks for Jones. I mean, it's given how well he's played, it's outrageous to think that he could lose touches to Leonard Fournette, and yet NFL coaches do stuff like that. And so there's obviously that risk with him. The price is really good, though, and
it is.
I mean, you're probably playing him over Josh Jacobs in the same game because you usually we tend to not want to play guys against the Tampa Bay run defense.
2.9 yards per carry in a game that I think they're going to be trailing. I'd play Rojo. I'd play CEH over Jacobs. I don't know about Mixon and Gurley, but there's 2 guys in that range. I'd probably play Chris Carson over Jacobs too. So Jacobs is pretty down the list for me right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really the guys just below, like McKinnon against the Pats, which is fine, and theoretically Devin Singletary against the Jets should be good, but I don't know how anybody goes into Devin Singletary and is like, all right, I feel good about this one. This is definitely the week. I feel like there are just so many times where it's been the Devin Singletary best opportunities, and just they're just not there, and so.
Yeah, and Zach Moss is back playing, so that maybe hurts you a little bit at the goal line too. I mean, Singletary's super talented, but I think he probably has to bust a big one for that to work.
Right.
He's got to probably score a 40-yard touchdown and then get the other stuff kind of built in there, but and that works that way. But he's 5,800? Yeah, I mean, I think it's so little up to Rojo. I'd play Carson and CEH over him too. I don't think I'm going to get there on Singletary. McKinnon's an interesting one because we talked about him early on in the season. I think I nailed one of the weeks where he didn't play that much, and then the other week he had a lot of work. I think it depends on game script. I think that they have to. I think you want them trailing the Patriots for McKinnon to work. I think you want him catching passes in the backfield. If they're ahead, the way they used JaMychal Hasty last week in the second half, I think says a lot. And he looked really good. I mean, it was only 4 yards per carry, but you could tell he looked a little bit more like Mostert does with a boom, one cut and kind of go than McKinnon does. So he looked more like a Mostert runner to me. He doesn't have Mostert's speed or talent, but he looked more like that type of runner where he can get outside or he can make the one cut, which Kyle Shanahan really likes. We're on video now, so I'm doing things with my hands, apparently. It's very strange how that works. I didn't used to do that. But I just I can't. I find it hard to play McKinnon. I just think maybe in a tournament, the upside's obviously there, but I just don't think the touches are there. I think the floor is really scary with McKinnon.
Okay, that's fair. There are 3 guys below that I think are worth discussions.
I have 3 here too, so I think we'll probably have the same 3. But go ahead.
All right. One of them is not Kenyon Drake, so I'm not a.
That was a beautiful one. I had him in the showdown. It was I was talking to you. I actually captained Michael Gallup, who did nothing, and ended up cashing because Kenyon Drake had 75 points or whatever it was. It was awesome.
So the other one is obviously the backfield that we've talked about all season. DeAndre Swift from the Lions, coming off a huge game that ruined our Stafford shares last week. We only had 14 rushing attempts though, so it's like I don't know how much I want to get involved, but like Atlanta is terrible. Obviously, we didn't get it with McKinnon last week, but I think he at least has to be in the conversation along with Antonio Gibson, even though McKissick is getting some more work, but like Gibson seems very much into it. And I would love to play Justin Jackson this week, but the Joshua Kelly potential just bothers me enough where I probably don't. Like I like all three of these guys when it's clear they're the guys, and it's not really clear this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the price is low enough on Jackson, and the situation's good enough where I'm going to play some of him. Last week without Mcclure, he played 42 snaps. Joshua Kelly played 25, but they were kind of catching up in that game. So that was, I think it's too easy to say it, but I think he kind of just slides into the Mcclure role. So I think Kelly is the first down guy, the guy closing games. So you worry about if they get up on Jackson, like maybe we see a lot of Josh Kelly in the second half. But I think Justin Jackson's really good.
He is really good, yeah.
And Jacksonville can't stop anybody. You mentioned DeAndre Swift. He went crazy on against Jacksonville last week. David Johnson had 96 yards the week before that. That'll tell you something right there. Right. Joe Mixon had $151 and 2 touchdowns on Jacksonville. I mean, they can't stop anybody. I like Justin Jackson enough. I think your Joshua Kelly concern is valid. I think Jackson does enough in this matchup to be worth the price, though.
All right. Do you feel the same way about Antonio Gibson? You made fun of me yesterday because I sent you a lineup that had multiple football team pieces, and he wasn't even one of them.
You can't play seven guys from the same team in his lineups. It's too much. Antonio Gibson's interesting. He's 5,000. Dallas is obviously terrible on defense. Really nice matchup. He's still really cheap. McKissick, for some reason, taking away McKissick has 22 targets the last 3 weeks, which is pretty wild when you think about it. Like I don't know why Antonio Gibson's strength is catching the ball in the backfield and you're dropping the ball off to McKissick, who's not a bad player, but just a guy. He's like a journeyman guy that you don't really need that. And Antonio Gibson has 5 targets each of the last 3 weeks, so still doing pretty well. But you just think if you add like half of McKissick in there, it could be huge. Yeah. But his touches the last 3 weeks, 17, 16, 13, enough where he makes an explosive play. It works, but you're never going to. I don't think you're going to ever get volume from him. He's not going to be the guy that's getting 26 carries, but. Kenyon Drake was crazy against the Cowboys last week. You mentioned him earlier. Yeah, I think he's very playable at 5,000. I think he's a guy where there's a floor problem there. I think that he could have a game where he has 8 carries and 3 catches, and you're not super surprised. But I think the explosiveness is there. I think he's a boom or bust guy, but the boom is very real against Dallas this week.
Okay, yes, that makes me feel better. So like,
if I had to pick one right now, I'd take Justin Jackson.
Yeah, that's where I was with that. I'm just not sure that Swift is so far behind the other two for me, just because that seemed just so fluky last week. But
yeah, Swift's super talented. He's a huge prospect coming out of Georgia, and he had a 54-yard run in the first carry, but he had 2 touchdowns that are both 1-yard touchdowns, which you're like, oh, well, that's not going to happen again. But it's a good sign that he is the goal line guy. Yeah. Like he came in for both goal line, and it was out of the bye, which you like to see. Like maybe they figured it in the bye. Like let's deal with the first 4 games, then maybe kind of unleash him and let him go. But then I stare at 29 snaps, and I'm like, boy, he has to do a lot with those snaps to work out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't just be like, well, if you don't count the 54-yarder, but like if you don't count the 54-yarder, it really wasn't that huge of a game. And so, obviously the touchdowns help, but and
he has the ability to break a 54-yarder, but he's just the touches are so little right now, and 29 snaps is really not very many. He's pretty much has to do that on one of those plays, which is hard to bank on. I think that in a tournament he's very playable. I certainly would not play him in a cash game.
Yeah, but like I said, like I think we've kind of hit on every salary tier. Just thinking of like specifically cash games. Like if you don't want to play 3 big ones, you can play 2 of them and Gibson, or I doubt you play one of them with Gibson and Jackson, but like you theoretically could do that because we do have some receivers on this slate who can put up some pretty big scores, and so. I just don't think that there's going to be like a very consistent build this week, just because there are a lot of ways you can go, and they all kind of project out the same.
Yeah, they do. It's I think that I like the thought of 2 of Aaron Jones, Hunt, and James Conner with one of the guys at the bottom is kind of where I'm going to start with, but I got to figure out Kamara before I do that too if I want to pay up. But if I can save a little money there, I might go with something like that.
Kamara never disappoints though, so I just
after living through 2019 of like the extreme Kamara disappointment, yeah, it can be rough, but again, you're paying $8,000 for a guy who has to do something with his touches, but he's just, I mean, I think the Mike Thomas thing is pretty big. I think if he doesn't play, that certainly impacts his targets pretty significantly.
Yeah. Now that we have to worry about Taysom Hill near the goal line too, it's just ridiculous.
So gross. Sean Payton drives me nuts. So let's jump into quarterbacks. I think quarterback is awesome this week. There are so many guys up top that are super playable that it's a really interesting quarterback week for me. We obviously have Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray in that game that playing against each other. Kyler Murray's 900 less than Russell Wilson. That's I was pretty surprised by that, but I guess the Kyler Murray Monday night game where he didn't do much passing, but he had 2 touchdown passes, and then he had a big rushing game. He had 74 yards and a touchdown. Didn't impact his price, but Josh Allen 7,700 I think is pretty much a cross off for me. I know he's playing the Jets, but I just worry about the second half of that game, and I just there's like 4 guys I'd play ahead of him. So it's nothing to do with Josh Allen. There's just a bunch of guys in the range I'd rather play. Mahomes is 7,400, and then I'll drop down to Deshaun Watson 6,800. Those are the 4 guys. Watson, Mahomes, Murray, and Wilson I think are super playable, and I like a lot. So how do you figure out which one to play if you're you?
Before that, like Josh Allen's definitely scoring 30 points this week. It just is going to come in the first half, and then
anytime I call someone a cross off, that guarantees 36 points.
Well, it's just like he's the way that they score touchdowns, and they're just going to absolutely annihilate the Jets. So it's going to be one of those where you're like, oh my god, he might score 100 fantasy points this week, and then they just pull him because they don't necessarily.
Yeah, and then last week we had Ryan Fitzpatrick had 3 touchdowns in the first half and like 180 yards and didn't do a thing in the second half. Yeah. It's like I was like, oh, we're getting a 325 touchdown game, and it was like, oh, Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't end up working out because they just literally didn't do anything the whole second half. Yeah, they
didn't need to. I think the separation between Murray and Wilson is weird.
It's important. I mean, 900 is a big deal.
Yeah. It's less that I think Wilson is not priced low enough. Like, I think he should be higher, but like Murray should definitely be up there. Like,
Murray I'm not 700 makes no sense. Why is he so low? I don't know.
It's a weird one. I don't know what Deshaun Watson has to do to get more expensive though. Like that.
Why is he under 7? I scrolled and I'm like, where's Deshaun? I'm like, oh, he's 6,800. That is odd. In the highest so total game on the slate.
Right. Yeah. And you said it, I think it was last week we were talking about it, and you were just like, obviously the answer is just play Deshaun Watson every week. Like, it's as simple as that. And
sure as hell's worked the last 3 weeks.
And to be 1,200 less than Russell Wilson, almost 1,000 less than Josh Allen. Like, I just, this game, as you said, has the highest total. He's done everything that you could possibly want out of a quarterback the last few weeks. Jokingly about bonuses with Zeke, at least just Deshaun Watson finished with 300 3 games ago instead of 299. But like, I think from a salary perspective, obviously people who are paying up for 3 running backs, it's going to be really tough to play somebody like Wilson or Allen, and Mahomes and Murray are kind of close enough for like maybe you might not be able to get there. And Watson just fits so perfectly in that I think a lot of people go there. The only tempting one otherwise, I think, and I will not play him because I don't think I will ever play him again, is Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I definitely was going to get to Ryan as we hit the lower guys, but it's interesting to me. You talk about this, and we're like Wilson and Murray and Deshaun Watson. I looked at percentages, projected ownership, and nobody's going to be really high just because I think they're going to have so many guys. But Murray and Wilson, I think, are going to easily be the highest. I mean, the Seattle defense is terrible. I mean, I know they're 5-0, but they give up so many yards, and some of that is they score so much teams have to try and score against them. But they get up over 300 yards passing in 3 of their 5 games, like 390 yards passing in 3 of their 5 games. That's a huge number.
That's ridiculous.
And Murray's weird. Like, sometimes it looks ugly. The first 7 minutes of that Dallas game, I'm like, oh my god, he's going to throw for 12 yards tonight. And then you look up and he throws an 80-yard touchdown to Christian Kirk. He only threw for I think 188 yards. He only completed 9 passes. So he was definitely off all day. But then you look up and he had 10 rushes for 74 yards and a rushing touchdown. It's weird. Like, we see Lamar Jackson, and he's obviously so fast and good, but like Kyler has another gear of speed that I think we've ever seen from a quarterback. Maybe Michael Vick in the prime years, but there's like little holes. And you're like, oh, he's going to get hit, and all of a sudden he's like 10 yards through that hole, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. So And he's $900 less than Wilson. Wilson's obviously been amazing. Touchdowns, 4, 5, 5, 2, and 3. He's only been under 288 yards once all year, which is wild too. I just want to read off to you, like the stat I heard from a couple people where Arizona hasn't allowed 3 touchdown passing game or 300 yards all year. I'd like to read off to you the 6 quarterbacks that the Cardinals have faced before I give that stat any credence. Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, Teddy Bridgewater, Matt Stafford, maybe, Dwayne Haskins, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, I don't think any of those quarterbacks are going to throw for 300 yards against anybody. Maybe Stafford a little bit. Maybe Garoppolo has 3 touchdowns sometimes. But they have faced a very weak lineup of quarterbacks. So I'm not going to read into that too much. Great game script, high total, close game. Having said all that about those 2 guys, if you ever want to have a week where Patrick Mahomes is under 5%, and that sounds like a pretty good thing, I think this is the week. The game script's not good. Everybody loves Kyler. Everybody loves Wilson. Everybody loves Watson. Patrick Mahomes at 7,400 for the first time maybe in 2 years is going to fly super under the radar.
We're actually missing another guy that I think is going to be pretty popular, which will push Mahomes down, and it's Aaron Rodgers. Like, we talk about how much we like Aaron Jones, but it's very easy for Green Bay to just destroy Houston because of Aaron Rodgers. And so if Rodgers, who's 7,000, like, he's cheaper than all of them, obviously he's a little more than Watson. But if Rodgers gets any sort of ownership, then obviously, like you said, that's pushing Mahomes down. Yeah, you're right. It'll be a fun Mahomes week.
I will have a team on both DraftKings and FanDuel where it has a Mahomes Tyreek Hill stack, and I think everybody should have at least one of those because it's the week to have Mahomes under 5%. And it's gonna be really low owned, and anytime I can get someone that good, that low, Tyreek Hill is way underpriced this week too. I know he hasn't done a ton. He's still scored 4 touchdowns, but he's 6,400 and dropped a huge amount. It's weird to see him at that price. I think a Mahomes Hill stack is super inviting this week, and I'm going to have I usually play 3 or 4 teams. One of my teams is going to be Mahomes Hill for sure.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I mean, under-owned Chiefs is like a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah, and it's coming. I mean, he's been under 240 passing yards 2 of the last 3 weeks. That's not going to sustain. I mean, and the problem is Denver. You hope maybe they can score some points. They need to score a few points for this to really work out. They got to get to like 17 somehow maybe, which I don't know if they can do. Denver's been pretty good against the pass last 2 weeks, but it was Cam Newton and it was the Jets. Sorry, I keep going back to the Jets. I don't mean to be doing it, but it's just, their pass game is not very good. I think it's really interesting. Rodgers is, right there too, like 7,000. I think that he's going to have some ownership for sure in that game, but probably not high with all these other guys around him. He looked terrible last week against Tampa Bay. Like, he looked legit bad. Like, he was 16 to 35. The pick 6 was like, one of those plays like, that was a really bad play. And then after that, he looked horrible. He had 160 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 7 touchdowns in 2 games prior, so it was kind of out of nowhere off the bye too. Yeah, I mean, they're facing a bad defense in Houston. I tend to think that I'm going to have Aaron Jones in that matchup, so I probably won't have a lot of Rodgers.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's some cheaper guys you can consider too.
So tell me who you like in those in the lower 6,000s.
I mean, would you go back to Stafford? I mean, they're playing the Falcons.
That's the one, right? Like he's 6,500. They're playing the Falcons in a game that should be a really really high scoring back and forth affair. The Falcons are so bad on defense. I mean, Kirk Cousins didn't play well last week and had 334 and 3. I get it was a lot of garbage time, but Teddy Bridgewater had 313 yards, 2 touchdowns the week before. Like, Teddy Bridgewater doesn't do that.
Every reason we liked Stafford last week is like it's better this week. And
especially the fact that everybody's gonna be like pissed off at him and not playing him. So I think that even adds more to his potential. He's 6,500. It's just so hard to play him and not play Deshaun Watson for $300 more. But in a tournament, everybody's going to look at that and do the same thing. So I think he's a really interesting play this week, and I think he'll be lower percentage than he was last week for sure.
I knew the matchup, and so when I opened my DraftKings window, I was like, let me just put Stafford in because I know that was like just to see how everything's going to work. I liked him last week. I'm not going to let that throw me off for this week. And I was like, oh wait, Watson. Like, I was expecting Watson to be 74, so I didn't have to worry about it. And I was like, if Watson's 300 more, I'm just going to go there.
Yeah, and we mentioned Watson is great the last 3 weeks, 335, 359, 300 the last 3 weeks with 9 touchdowns thrown in those 2 weeks. Will Fuller is healthy and looking good. Brandon Cooks looks good. Darren Fells is catching touchdowns. Like the offense is working. It's a game where they're going to have to score against Green Bay to work. Their defense is not going to stop Green Bay. He's still not running a lot, but he had 25 and 26 yards last couple weeks, at least a couple extra points there. Green Bay's allowed multiple touchdowns in 4 of 5 weeks. Brady didn't do much last week, but didn't have to. It's hard to get away from Deshaun Watson. I just think the price is just wrong.
Yeah, that's how I was looking at it.
Any love for Cam Newton this week, 6,300 against the Niners, who have their struggles with the running quarterback?
No.
Yeah, me either. They do struggle against running quarterbacks. He didn't look back last week, and I don't know if the COVID kind of affected him all. He didn't play well. They lost to Denver at home. But Daniel Jones had 49 yards against him. Wentz had 37. Kyler had 91. They just struggle against that for some reason. But I think you need to get at least one rushing touchdown, maybe 2 out of him for him to work. And there's so many guys I just rather play that I just don't think I'm going to end up on Cam this week.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was looking at it. I was more trying to convince myself of the guys below him. Even I probably wasn't going to play Drew Brees at 6,100, but that's probably the cheapest we've seen him in a while.
Yep.
Minshew's matchup against the Chargers really isn't that bad. I think that is kind of an interesting GPP game. Just because, why would you ever go there
right
when other people are playing everything else? What do you think about Kyle Allen at 5,200?
I think that I'm not going to do it, but I fully get it. The Cowboys defense is so bad that it might work. I'd play Joe Burrow for $300 more if I had to go down there.
Okay.
Just because the Bengals just throw the ball so much. I mean, he has 35 or more attempts in 3 of the last 4 games. He had a pretty good game against Cleveland the first time. I think he threw for 300 yards in that game. He threw for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be trailing that game. I think Cleveland's going to be able to score on Cincinnati. If I had to go down there, if Kyle Allen was 4,200 maybe, but at 5,200, I think I'd just slide to Burrow pretty easily. I just don't trust Kyle Allen myself. I don't trust them not to yank him in that game if he's doesn't look good. Not for me when I have someone in that range that I'd play over him.
All right, so Burrow, Higgins, Hunt, run back, perfect.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. If you wanted to go off the radar with the stack, I mean, obviously Hunt's going to be fairly popular, but if you want to go off the radar a little bit with the other side of the stack, I think it gets pretty interesting.
All right, that's fair.
So let's jump into wide receivers. We got some guys at the high end this week. We have Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, and Michael Thomas. As we mentioned earlier, Michael Thomas did not practice yesterday, has the other injury. He's 7,600. Probably a full stay away for him now. I mean, even if he plays, you just worry about how long he's going to play if he tweaks that. For 7,600, I don't think I'm playing the price. I assume you're on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, it's close enough to Hopkins and Adams that I would just go there. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can go down. You can go down. I was gonna say down to Julio and Ridley. I don't think I'm gonna risk it. I mean, maybe that makes sense in a GPP game, a low percentage, but I think the risk of him running 5 plays and feeling a tweak is just too high for me. So between Adams and Hopkins, the 2 guys at the top, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to afford these guys this week. Obviously, they're both in games with super high totals. You want some pieces of. Do you have a preference between the 2?
DK Metcalf.
Oh, that's hard to go wrong with DK Metcalf.
These guys. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're both fine. The Hopkins thing, obviously he can have huge games whenever he wants, but just the way that they use him, I wish they used him like the Seahawks used DK Metcalf. And so
be nice.
The Metcalf being 1,000 less seems crazy to me. Jeff and Chris were talking about the possibility of Antonio Brown joining them. Obviously that's not going to happen this week, but Jeff was saying it might take away from Metcalf, but Chris was no, it's Lockett Lockett and all the tertiary guys are going to be the ones who struggle with it. But Metcalf, it just seems like this offense is so set up. Everything they do is set up to get him on a long play at some point. And the guy just seems to catch all of them. It's just a matter of holding onto the ball as he crosses the goal line.
Yeah, and Wilson drops them in the perfect spot every time too. I mean, it's a perfect mix of quarterback deep ball and receiver who's big, huge, and fast at the same time. Mm-hmm. Hopkins is, I think the problem is the price. He's $1,700 more than Metcalf on FanDuel too. You mentioned the $1,000 on DK. He's $1,700 on FanDuel. I just want to read you some of the receiver performances against Seattle this year. We're talking about Hopkins. Adam Thielen was 9 for 80 and 2 touchdowns in week 5. Devontae Parker, 110 yards the week before that. Week before that, Cedric Wilson, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper were over 85 yards. Julian Edelman had 179 yards the week before that.
That was a fluky game, that one.
And then to ramp it up even more, 3 Falcons were over 100 yards in week 1. I mean, it's just been an absolute carnival for wide receivers against Seattle. The problem is the price. It's going to be hard to fit him in, but he has 7+ targets every game. I know he had 2 catches last week. It was his first game with less than 6 catches. So he has 6 catches or more in 5 of the 6 games. I don't think they've had a bye yet. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, though, which is a little bit concerning. I don't know if it's a maintenance thing or he's got a little bit of a tweak. But the matchup and game script are absolutely perfect. I just wonder what his percentage is going to be. I'm really curious to see if people are going to be able to fit in Hopkins this week, because Kyler Murray's a guy that you can play without stacking the receiver, which makes him a little different than other quarterbacks that we talk about. I just don't know if that many people are going to be able to fit him. I saw some ownership projections, and Hopkins is pretty high. I just don't know if it works with the prices. I don't think he's going to be quite as high as people think, and that makes him a little interesting. I think we're looking at like 12-13% rather than the 18 to 20% I've seen some places.
Yeah, you just really have to prioritize him. Like, you're basically building around him, and it's kind of weird. Like, if you look at those horrific defensive numbers, and you're like, it seems like you said there were multiple games where multiple receivers had huge games.
Yep.
So if you're going to try your luck on that one, why not try with Christian Kirk, or I doubt Fitzgerald.
Who didn't get bumped up salary-wise because they played on Monday night.
Right. So, like, if you're going to try to if you're going in saying the Seahawks pass defense is horrible, and I need to have somebody against them, I would be more willing to take the chance on a $4,900 wide receiver than an $8,200. And that's not to say that Hopkins won't have a huge game, but it just seems like I just never like to prioritize a wide receiver like that. Like, if you're doing Hopkins, then you're probably not paying up for 3 running backs. Cash games, that's, in GPP, that's fine. But, you have to think of, like, would I rather play Hopkins or Kamara or Hopkins or Jones? And then do you have to play Kyle Allen in order to fit it in, or somebody like, Burrow? And then it's like, it seems like you're just sacrificing a lot to fit in DeAndre Hopkins, both because he's great and the matchup. But if you really emphasize the matchup, then just play one of the other guys.
Yeah, and it seems like they don't really take deep shots with him. The plays he hits deep are kind of like crossing patterns, and he just breaks for 50 yards. Like the one on Monday night, he caught maybe a 10-yard pass and just broke out for 40, 50 yards. But, the deep balls go to Kirk. They go to Andy Isabella. They think they're like deep to Andy Isabella like 3 different times on Monday night. They were like trying to force that. It was really weird. But it seems like the Hopkins plays are like 6-yard outs, little stops, and here's things. And they get the ball out so quickly that happens a lot.
Dan Arnold has a 9.2 ADOT, and Hopkins is 7.8.
Hopkins 7.8 is crazy. Like, that just – but that's how they use him. They use it for the quick drop back, quick out, get 6 yards. It's kind of like a running play. It's the way they run their offense. But it's good for PPR, but, at 8,200, you want some big plays in there also.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
We mentioned the Atlanta guys facing Detroit this week. What do you do with those guys? Julio obviously had the huge game last week. When we talked about it Friday, we didn't look like he was going to play, and then Friday afternoon, it was like, oh, he practiced, and then they're like, all of a sudden he's back, and he goes for 137 and 2 touchdowns. He was on the Millie Maker winning team last week with Matt Ryan. Great matchup, a great game script again. I mean, Keelan Cole had 143 yards against Detroit last week. We mentioned Hopkins. He had 137 in week 3. So there's been some big games against this defense. It's slowly becoming the Godwin Evans thing, though. Like, we have to figure out which guy to play. But Calvin Ridley's been really good in the 3 games where Julio Jones has played, so I don't think that's a concern. Are you playing either of these guys? Do you have a preference which one? Like, how do you even figure out these 2 guys right now?
I probably do what I did with with Godwin and Evans, and I just don't play either of them. At the very least, when it's a Ridley week, Julio usually is still okay, unless he gets hurt, which is obviously always a possibility. But it felt like with the Godwin Evans thing, like if it was an Evans week, Godwin was awful, and vice versa. So I don't know. I just there are guys cheaper that I think don't necessarily have the ceiling, but the floors are close enough. And obviously in cash games, you tend to focus on floors I just don't see myself in this range at all. Because I'll probably pay for the running backs. And
that would include Metcalf then too?
Probably, although he is really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, he only had 4 catches the first 4 games. He had 6 last game, but they always take 2 or 3 shots.
Yeah,
every single game. Without fail, there's 2 or 3. I think they have it built in their offense that
they should.
We haven't taken a shot play. More teams should do that. Like, if you have a decent receiver, you get pass interference, you get deep plays. There's a lot of things that can happen, and not enough teams. If I'm Pete Carroll once a quarter. I'm going deep to DK Metcalf, just kind of a part of our game plan.
I don't know how they do it. At least once a drive. Like there's no reason to not try it. For how many ones he comes down with, or he just outruns the cornerbacks. Like it's there. Lockett feels really cheap though. Like
I love Tyler Lockett this week. I think that I'm a big fan of him this week. What, he's 6,600?
66 on DraftKings. Yeah. Like I really like Kenny Golladay at 67 is going back to like the reasons I played him in cash last week and they're playing Atlanta now. Like,
and we talked about Stafford struggling this week, but Golladay still had 100 yards. I mean, he didn't have a huge game, but he still had 14.5 points on DraftKings. I mean, he still was fine for the price, and they bumped him up, but I think it's 60. I think under 7,000 again in a great matchup against Atlanta, who just can't stop anybody and stop anything. I mean, Justin Jefferson was 9 for 166 and 2 touchdowns last week against Atlanta. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson had 205 yards the week before that. Kenny Golladay at 6,700 is going to be in a lot of my lineups this week. I love the play this week.
Yeah, I don't get the Lockett price. I mean, maybe it's just because he hasn't been that great recently. That's like pushing it down. But like for how many points are expected in that game and for how much the Seahawks like to throw, both of them seem a little underpriced. So I guess we were used to seeing them much closer together. Metcalf obviously separates because of the touchdowns. But I mean, I think there are a lot of guys in this range that you can play that that's the reason why I don't necessarily need to go up to Hopkins or Adams, because like you can play Golladay, you can play Lockett. However you want to do the Dallas guys against Washington, I think are fine. Although if you really put a lot on Andy Dalton, then you don't go there. But it's like the I'll call it sub 6,200, but even sub 6,000. Like I think there are a lot of guys you can play down there that I don't think that they should be 6,800 to 7,000, but I think that they're underpriced, and so I think I'll probably be closer in that range.
Yeah, so it's an interesting range. I mean, Golladay is really interesting. I like Tyreek Hill a lot, who was talked about earlier. I think the 6,400, he's $700 cheaper than he was last week. And I get that it just hasn't, the targets aren't there right now. It's the way defenses are playing them. I don't know. You can't really analyze it, but I think he feels due to me. I think he feels due for one of those big games. But at 6,400, I think he becomes really interesting even without the targets. I think that, even if he gets 5-6 targets, I think he becomes playable at that price. Where it's 7,000, maybe he's not. You mentioned Golladay and Lockett. Anybody else in this range before we jump down? You mentioned you want to talk about the lower ranges. I don't think I'm playing the Dallas guys. I just think Andy Dalton. And there's enough guys in here that I just like more that I'm probably not going to go there. I mean, all the Cooper and CeeDee Lamb stuff last week were all late. I mean, Cooper scored with like a minute and a half left in that game when they were way down, and Lamb kind of broke out in the fourth quarter. And I like both those guys. I just don't think that with Dalton I'm going to pay up for the price this week.
Yeah, we just like them with Dak much more. Simple as that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump to 6,000 and under. The first guy for me again is Robbie Anderson. They're at New Orleans. He was a little bit quiet last week. He only had 5 targets, but still 4 for 77 yards. He's getting a lot done with his targets. He has double-digit scoring in PPR every single week of the season, even with only 1 touchdown, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Pretty good game script. You got to figure that this is going to be a game where Carolina's going to have to throw the ball, going to have to score a little bit to stay with New Orleans. Mike Williams went crazy against New Orleans last week, the last New Orleans game, 5 for 109 and 2 touchdowns. I think with all these guys above him, and we're going to talk about Terry McClure in a second, who I think is going to be on every team that everybody builds. I think Anderson's again another week where he slides through a pretty good percentage. DJ Moore is right there with him. I think DJ Moore is 5,900 if I scroll down, 5,600. Sorry. So people can play one of those two guys. A lot of people play McClure, and a lot of people jump up to maybe the Lockett, Golladay, Tyreek Hill range. But I think Robbie Anderson's a really good play again this week.
You finally on Anderson over Moore?
I think so. I hate it. It pains me to my core, but I think I am. I think that. They're close enough in price where I think Anderson's been doing just a little bit more the way their offense is built right now.
Yeah. Could you imagine how good the Jets would be if they had him? They should try that. Anyway, although the guy right below Anderson, salary-wise, who has like 15 targets in every single game. Oh, no, it's 13, 10, 10, and 13 is Jamison Crowder in a game the Jets should be throwing plenty of because they're going to be losing all the time.
He had 13 targets last week and somehow turned that into 48 yards.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, man. That's what happens.
Joe Flacco's not good.
The difficulty, like I almost played Crowder in cash last week. I think he was 6,100, which was like a little. It just didn't fit my build last week. But I think it's because I know how bad the Jets. I mean, we all know how bad the Jets are, but I just take it particularly worse than others because I actually attempt to like this team. But
do you watch the entire games?
No, God,
no,
heavens, no. I'm full red zone.
I didn't know if you're one that like still watches the fourth quarter and won't flip around, even if you're. Some people are like that, and I have some friends like that with the Niners that I'm like, dude, if they're losing the fourth quarter, I'm watching other games. Like I just can't do it. I need to see them get their butt kicked, you know?
Yeah, I see them sporadically on red zone when they're about to give up a touchdown, and it's just not enjoyable. Like I watch football because it's fun, and the Jets are not. It's not fun to watch the Jets. So,
your son to change a channel there too. You're good there.
There's no reason to change. We start on red zone, and like
Beautiful.
if it's if the Jets are in the red zone, then we'll see it, and otherwise, I just don't have to put myself through it.
That's a good call.
So, like, am I too biased against the Jets to like? Is Crowder a good play?
I mean, I think so. I think you're going to get peppered with targets that much in a game that you're certainly going to be losing. 5,900 on DraftKings where you get the full point PPR is. I mean, I don't see he has double-digit targets every single game.
Every game.
Every game. I mean, we're not even exaggerating. He only played 4 games, but double-digit targets every single game. I don't think anybody's going to play him. I think he's going to get a guy that people are like, I don't really want to play Jamison Crowder because you're looking for extreme upside, right? But I mean, you give me 12 targets, and if you tell me before the game he gets 12 targets, I play him for sure. And that's what they've done so far. And I don't. You probably you hope you get the touchdown, which is the way it worked the first couple games. But 7 for 48 is not going to kill you, but it's also not going to help you at that price. I think he's really playable. I just it's hard with the upside guys around him, but I think he's very playable to answer your question.
Okay, that's fair. It's just I mean, I think there's just so many guys. We obviously touched on Anderson and Moore. We didn't even talk about Beckham. Like, I'm not going to go there, but like that guy can win a GPP anytime.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about A.J. Brown, who's 6,300 right there in a game that Tennessee probably has to throw a ball a little more to stay with Pittsburgh. I mean, his price went up, but he had 2 touchdowns last week and looks like a guy that is different than the guy from last year. Last year was like the boomer bust guy and a few targets, but he might hit the big play. He has like 7+ targets in all 3 of their games. I only think he's played 3 games, but they're using him differently.
They're using him, yeah. That's how it feels. They're just finally using him.
And we talk about Pittsburgh. I mean, Travis Fulgham had 152 yards on them a couple weeks ago, and there have been some big games. Darius Slayton had a big game against them. I think if you want to beat them, it's by throwing the ball. And Tennessee's smart. Mike Vrabel's a really smart coach. I think he's going to figure that if we're going to win that game and stay in that game, it's going to have to be through the air a little bit more than we're used to.
All right. See, there's so many guys you can play.
So many guys, and we got to talk about him. Terry McLaurin is 5,800 on DraftKings and playing Dallas. I think everybody loves him this week, so I don't want to talk about him too in depth because I think we're not breaking any news here. Everybody likes Terry McLaurin this week. Everybody thinks he's underpriced. He had 12 targets last week. Yeah. I didn't think he had a very game, and I looked closer as we're prepping for the podcast. He has 7 for 74, but 12 targets. He has 7+ targets every single week. He's the one guy in this offense that consistently they use him every time. He has double-digit targets in 3 of 6. Super talented guy. I don't need to go through all the receivers that have been crazy against Dallas, but I mean, you could list them off. And there's a ton of them. And we talked about the Odell Beckham 3 touchdown games. The only game he's really done anything. Yeah. Had a huge game. He hasn't had 100 yards all year, but he had 3 touchdowns against them. I mean, Slayton had a big game. Christian Kirk had 2 touchdowns last week. There's no way to get away from McLaurin unless you want to go GPP and go different and fade and hope that he doesn't do much. But everybody's gonna play him this week. He's gonna be the highest percentage player. I think it's gonna be not that close.
Yeah, I generally don't play him because of Dwayne Haskins, and it's not like Kyle Allen is all that great. But we played DJ Moore plenty last year with Kyle Allen, and so I'm willing to do it with McLaurin. Yeah, that price was just too low, and you're right. Everybody's going to be on him, certainly in cash games.
Shouldn't be under 6,000 in the matchup. It's just you'll get some faders in GBPs, and of course, and that I get the that can be smart to avoid the high percentage guy, but it's just an underprice more than anything.
I would say he is the second most underpriced. Can you say that? I'll say it. Why is Brandon Cooks 5,200?
It feels low, doesn't it? I mean, he's back-to-back really good games in a game that's the highest total on the slate. He had 21 targets last 2 weeks. He had that 0 that a lot of people played him for that one game. He didn't do anything. He has 21 targets last 2 weeks, and he might benefit him if Jair Alexander, who's quietly one of the probably 2 or 3 best cornerbacks in the league, if he covers Will Fuller, that kind of lets Brandon Cooks roam a little bit.
Right. And Fuller's been awesome too.
And Fuller's been awesome. Fuller scored 3 weeks in a row, 4. I think, and 4 weeks in a row, and he stayed healthy, which is staying upright for Will Fuller's kind of always been the biggest problem.
That's as much of a touchdown, right? Just
it is
going through a full game.
He's 6,800, which is, a full price, but
Yeah.
I think really good too. Great game script. He will get some Jair Alexander. You got to think they're probably going to see a lot of him, so maybe that moves me to Cooks. But I like Will Fuller. I just think in the price this week, there's other guys in that range I play. But you're right, Brandon Cooks 5,200 seems a really good play at the price in that game.
It seems like they didn't react to his price, but to his big game, but they did the opposite with T. Higgins, who just exploded last week and is now in this range. Although he's 5,300 is still pretty cheap for a game that they should be. I mean, we see the Bengals throw a ton of passes, and so.
And DJ Moore's in there at 5,600. So I have a guy in this range that I love. That I don't think you're going to be very playable this week. Is DJ Chark, 5,500. Tough matchup, but his price dropped $800 from last week. I know they're at the Chargers, tough matchup, but should be a good game script. They should be trailing the game. He dropped $800 after he had 14 targets last week. I was like, I looked at the game, like, I can't he had 14. He was only 7 for 45. So it was a really bad 14 targets, but you're going to give me a guy who's talented, good at 14 targets in a game they're going to be trailing. 5,500 when I think everybody's going to go to Cooks, everybody's going to go to Mclure. There's going to be some DJ Moore. There'll be a lot of T. Higgins. You mentioned him. I think Chark slides under at a pretty low ownership, but I think he's a really interesting play in a game that they should have to throw the ball the whole second half.
That's not who I thought you were going to talk about.
Oh, who do you think I was going to talk about?
Well, you mentioned Deontay Johnson earlier, but like,
I'm waiting for
no, but not him. I thought you were going to bring up Juju.
They finally priced him down, right?
Yeah, but it
took 6 weeks, but they finally priced him down.
Is it low enough?
I just think I like the other guys in the range more still.
It's crazy. He's cheaper than Claypool now.
Yeah, he should be.
Right, he should be. You're right.
He had 4 targets last week. He was 2 catches for 6 yards. I mean, I don't get it. I don't know if something's going on with him. I know something's hurt. I don't know if something's up with him and Ben. It just doesn't make any sense. But I mean, he hasn't had more than 8 targets in a game all year. This is Juju Smith-Schuster, who we're used to getting a lot of targets. I mean, he had last year he's banged up, but the year before he had double-digit targets in 9 or 10 games.
Yeah.
I mean,
we thought he was going to be Antonio Brown, basically.
Yeah, we did. And he was drafted as such last year, and this year he's over 50 yards once. 50. That's not even a high bar to get over. He had the first game, he has 6 for 69, two touchdowns. He has, I think, a combined 110 yards in 4 games since then. And he only played, the sneaky part, he's only played 42 snaps last week too.
Yeah, that's wild. I don't know what
they were up in that game, and it was kind of didn't have to do anything. But Claypool still got it done. I mean, it just, I don't know. He's like the third option right now, and I don't. Right. It's hard to explain it. It's hard to figure it out. He's probably gonna have a game at some point where he breaks out. I'm not gonna try and pick that game and play every week and try and find the right game. I'm just not doing it right now. I just don't see anything there.
And do you actually think it's a Deontay Johnson week, or is just 4,200 for 3 targets in his last 2 games because he got hurt enough?
I think 4,200 is enough. I think that he was 5,600 2 weeks ago. And he just didn't do anything wrong. He just got hurt, which obviously it kills you in DFS. But he's practicing. It sounds like he's going to play. He had 23 targets the first 2 games. He's barely played since then. All 3 Texan wide receivers scored against Tennessee last week. And, I mean, Will Fuller had over 23 yards. If you want a piece of this, I almost said Pirates. Geez, if this Steelers offense, I think at 4,200, he's I don't think there's a ton of really cheap plays this week. I don't think there's a lot of guys. Usually we got a couple guys. He's 4,000. There's one other guy I want to talk about, but there's not a lot of guys down here. If you want to get in some running backs and some receivers at the top, I think Deontay Johnson is a guy that has the most upside for 4,200 that we see on the slate. No,
I totally agree. Is the other guy that you want to talk about, does he have 2 first names?
He does have 2 first names. Two very Irish sounding first names.
Yeah. I don't understand how you go back-to-back weeks with over 100 yards.
Yes.
Going 3 games in a row with either 100 yards and a touchdown, and your price goes up $100, $4,600 for Tim Patrick. Like, if we think McLaurin should be popular, then why isn't Patrick equally as popular?
And Jerry Jeudy, who I really like as a player, is still $500 more.
Yeah.
And it's a game where we talked about Mahomes earlier, but Kansas City's going to score somehow in this game. They're going to get points, and Denver's going to have to throw the ball the whole second half. I mean, I think Tim Patrick is at 4,600 is really interesting. A big catch-up second half kind of play. I mean, 15 targets the last 2 weeks. You mentioned the 100 yards in both games. Yeah, I love it there too. I think him and Deontay are both way underpriced.
Yeah, the Jeudy price is interesting to me. Like, the 1 touchdown he had against the Jets like should have been an interception. Like it was
it was not a good pass. It was it was a really good play by Judy, but you're right. It should have been picked by Pierre Desir.
And if that's what's keeping him above Patrick, like I don't get that one at all.
Usually you get like the 100-yard week and the price doesn't move much, but you get that second one. Usually the price jumps up. I thought he was gonna be like 5,300 this week, and 4,600 jumped out to me as very playable.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, there are cheaper guys like you can try to get away with, but there's just no safety down here. I think that's ultimately the problem.
But I think that Kirk, Johnson, and Patrick are all under 5,000. Are all pretty playable guys.
Mm-hmm. Right, and obviously you play them if you're and Cooks. I would put Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
I guess he's 5,200. But if you're paying up for if you're paying up for running backs, like these are the guys, these are the wide receivers you're going to have to play, and they're like not that bad. It's not like you have to go all the way down. You're not playing Kendrick Bourne at 3,400 or
please don't do that.
Yeah, or Brashad Perriman at 37.
That dude cannot catch the ball. It drives me nuts. Sorry.
Yeah, just like the bottom. There's no bottom guys that like you're like, oh, that's a misprice at 3,200. Like that's perfect. I'll go play him. Like
there's no Olamide Zacchaeus.
That's right.
Ouch.
Yeah, that one didn't work.
No, it did. Some work, some don't. And obviously with the guys down there, I mean, Johnson, the thing with Johnson, Patrick, and Kirk is I think they're a little more talented than most of the guys we're usually playing down here. And I think and they're both, all three of them, they're on situations that should work out. I mean, Pittsburgh could get up on Tennessee, but you think that's a game that Tennessee's going to hang in. I mean, Tennessee's good. Tennessee and Pittsburgh are both good. Kirk and Seattle, obviously a high-scoring game. And then Patrick and Kansas City, you think they're going to have to throw the ball second half. So all kind of game script-wise, they work out too. And if you want pieces of that offense, under 5,000, they're all really good guys.
Yeah, Zacchaeus is 3,000.
Yeah, and what is he? Option 9 now.
0 catches on 2 targets last week.
That game, man, he had that 13-yard catch at the first drive. I was like, here we go. Just fell apart.
It was his last catch.
It was. Last guy I want to ask you about down here, the one guy that I think is playable if the situation works out. If Keenan Allen doesn't play, I think Mike Williams against Jacksonville at 4,700 becomes a pretty interesting play. He was really good in week 5 without Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen played the first series or two and then hurt the back. He scored the touchdown first, but then got hurt. And Mike Williams got 8 targets. He was 5 for 109. Herbert definitely trusts him to kind of throw those jump balls. And we talked about Jameis a lot last year. Like you want the quarterback who's willing to force the ball in because he trusts the receivers. It doesn't always work, but when it does, it's big plays. And Mike Williams is obviously super talented. He had a catch on the sideline against Kansas City that was just an absurd catch. Yeah. But I think he's playable. I think I probably want Keenan Allen not to play if I'm going to play him over those other 3 guys we mentioned, though.
I was just about to say the other 3 guys that gives you the out if Keenan Allen doesn't play. But Mike Williams was definitely, I think it was last season, where for most of the season he led the league in like air yards and targets without a touchdown. And so having 2, unfortunately scoring 2 last week or whenever that was, their last game.
Yeah, last game.
Is he done for the season?
I don't think so. I think with Herbert, I like the Herbert play because I think Herbert's willing to go deep. Where I think you throw the ball faster than Phillip Rivers does right now.
Yeah, sure. The Phillip Rivers deep duck is a.
Yeah, it's ugly, and it hurt Williams a lot last year. But let's jump into tight ends. Tight ends interesting this week. We've got 3 guys now. Now that I'm adding Darren Waller to the pool with the late ad there. There's 3 guys over 6,100, then no one between 5,000 and 6,100. Like there's these 3 guys, and then. And I like that DraftKings does that. Like, there's no reason to force somebody in the $5,000 range if they're not worth it. Like, there's Hawkinson's 5,000. There's nobody they don't make somebody 5,500, 5,600 just because they feel like they have to fill in that range, which I do like. We have Kittle, Kelsey, and Darren Waller at the top, 65, 63, and 6,100 respectively on DraftKings. George Kittle's probably my favorite player in the NFL. I am not getting anywhere near playing him this week in a week that I think Bill Belichick game plans to take him away.
Yeah, I mean, in that. In the Patriots-Chiefs game, everybody was talking about how Belichick really focuses on Kelsey because he thinks he's like just way too important. Like, let Tyreek Hill do whatever he wants, but let's stop Kittle. Let's stop Kelsey. And it seems like
he did it with Darren Waller too. Darren Waller had that huge Monday night game against New Orleans, and then had 2 catches. And it's the only game Waller has 45 yards in 4 or 5 games, 45 plus yards, and 7 targets in 4 or 5 games. It was the New England game where he hit neither of those. I think in the Niners offense, like Kittle is the key to that whole thing. And if Belichick is the way he game plans in the past, I think he takes Kittle away and makes other guys beat him. And Kittle may still beat that. He's talented enough and Shanahan's smart enough to be able to figure out some ways to get him. But I'm not paying for it this week.
Yeah, at 6,500, there's just no reason to take that, especially because Kelsey has a pretty good matchup, as does Waller, at least.
I play Kelsey and Waller this week over him without a second doubt.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because you basically have to look at it. You're not going to get a very cheap running back that you're going to want to play. So it's like, if you pay up for one of these guys at tight end, you're going to have to play probably one of those $4,000 or even a $3,000 wide receiver to kind of make up for it.
You might have to play two of them too.
Right. Yeah. Depending on what you do at running back and quarter. I mean, obviously there's only so much money you spend, but
exactly.
Excuse me. I think what you have to do is look at the cheaper tight ends and just say, do I want to play one of these guys or one of the cheaper wide receivers? And it seems like the wide receivers are a little safer this week.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I'm just not going to be able to afford these top guys. If I did it, it'd be Kelsey at 6,300. I mean, 7+ targets last 5 weeks. He's just the guy that is always involved. Game script wise, you worry about that if they get up on Denver, maybe they don't throw as much. But if I had to play one of these three guys, I think it would be Kelsey. Although I think Waller's interesting if they get behind Tampa Bay and they kind of just dump him a bunch and a lot of 10-yard plays, and I think that works too. If I had to play someone up here, I think it'd be Kelsey.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was starting to get worried. Like I always start at the bottom and work my way up with tight end. Like I'm willing to take the 0 on Adam Troutman when he starts and stuff like that. But like the bottom is really ugly this week.
It's bad. There's not. I guess Logan Thomas at 3,500 is like the one guy down there you might be able to play.
And I'm not sure why we keep thinking he's a play. Obviously, he had the touchdown last week, but like it just.
He had the targets early on, but I've kind of gone off him recently. Just it's Dallas and it's the touchdown last week. I think is why he jumps out a little bit. But I'd move up a little bit and play at tight end if I had to.
Yeah. So like we've got Anthony Fercer though, 9 targets last week. Obviously that was after Jonnu got hurt, and I think Smith.
Yeah, I mean if Jonnu doesn't play, he's kind of trending towards playing. If he doesn't play, I think that Fercer becomes a pretty easy slot in.
Yeah, Smith, practiced fully yesterday, so I think
he's going to play. Yeah, I do too.
One guy who you have mentioned on multiple podcasts that jumped out at me a little bit, and I couldn't decide if it was because he was actually a good play or I just constantly heard you talk about him. What do you think about Hunter Henry this week?
I think he is the best play in this range. I think that it's him. For me, it's him or Austin Hooper again. I like Henry, though. 4,500 seems cheap. He's just been solid. He hasn't been huge, so he hasn't get that bump up. But 50-plus yards or a touchdown in 4 or 5 games. So 4 or 5 games, he's done enough to probably work out at the price. We don't know if they'll need to throw, but if Keenan Allen doesn't play, I think he becomes a little more interesting too. Yeah. I think Keenan Allen's going to play though. But his price dropped $800 from last week. He was $5,300. Now he's at $4,500. I just think Hunter Henry's too good in an offense that I like to be 4,500. So I think he's a very playable guy. He's like, I had 3 guys bolted down here, and he's one of the 3.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
The other one is at the same price as Rob Gronkowski, who, interestingly enough, is kind of part of the offense now. Like he was weeks 1, you made a face, but weeks 1 through 4, 14 targets. Last 2 weeks, 14 targets. Also, he was 5 for 78 and a touchdown last week. His price only went up $200. I just think he's finally part of this offense. I think I prefer Henry. I think I prefer Hooper, but I think Gronkowski at the price is playable. It looks like Brady's definitely looking for him in the red zone too.
Yeah.
You're out. It looks like.
I just, I'll just play Gronk like when I have to, and it just doesn't feel like it's a week where you have to.
You don't think he's going to be nice and rested with the time in Las Vegas he's spending there?
Yeah. Right. All right. That's it. I'm off. But I think I play Henry over him though, so I probably won't have much Gronkowski. But I think he's one of the guys in the range that I do consider. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think you could also give a look at like Eric Ebron. Like I feel like every week he'll have a touchdown at some point, but like you're not obviously getting overly excited about him. The same about Dalton Schultz. Like with Dalton, maybe you feel a little bit better. Because
been quiet the last couple of weeks. I don't know if I think Schultz was more in that like Dak's throwing the ball 900 times a game, and he's going to get a piece of that. I just I don't see it with Andy Dalton, but it could work. I mean, at the price, it could work.
Yeah, I'm not going out of my way to get him. The one guy that intrigues me a little bit, which I certainly wouldn't play him in cash, but like Noah Fant is really good and is capable at least of like breaking off big plays which you don't get from tight ends very often. And like if we see that Denver needs to throw a lot, I mean, we already talked about Patrick, we talked about Judy. Like I think Fant's kind of an interesting play for tournaments as like just a bit of a one-off because like he has a pretty good upside just on each play that he has, he can take it to the house.
Yeah, and you like the fact that second half they're going to be throwing a lot against Kansas City, and it sounds like he's going to play at a full practice yesterday. Yeah. At least 5 targets every game too. He's only topped 60 yards once, but you just kind of, you like you said, he's the kind of the guy that can break the big play. We don't get a lot of that outside of the Kittle, Kelsey, Waller range. We don't get a lot of that down here of guys. You need guys to score most of these guys, but with Noah Fant, you can get that 50, 60 yard play, and you can kind of see that working out too. I do want to talk about Austin Hooper real quick before we move on to defenses. 4,000 on DraftKings. The price did not move up very much. But 5 for 52 last week on 6 targets. Like he wasn't huge, but at that price he didn't hurt you. 5+ catches 3 weeks in a row now. They're definitely using him more. He has 23 targets the last 3 weeks. I'm a little surprised the price isn't more in the $4,500 range, but I think the Hooper's still very playable this week in a game that against Cincinnati. I do like him this week again.
Yeah, that's a great call. I like that.
I mean, I would like Darren Fells in that same price, and if Aikens out again, he had 7 targets last week, but I don't know. I don't think I'm paying for Fells. I'd pay for Hooper over Fells for sure.
I mean, 4,100 is like barely paying though.
Yeah, it's just in that offense. If you want a piece of that, I get it. I just don't think Darren Fells is as good as he has been the last couple of weeks. A lot of people like T.J. Hawkinson this week at 5,000. In that, if you want to get a piece of that Detroit Atlanta game. Yeah. I think he has to score though. Like the way they're using him, he only has 9 targets the last 2 games. He's 2 for 9 and 2 for 17 in those 2 games. He did score last week, but I find it hard to pay 5,000 for him at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What about defense this week? Anybody you like? You're usually better at with the cheaper defenses. Who do you like in the cheap range? Let's start kind of backwards this week.
I looked at Detroit, which feels a little crazy, but all right. That's, I think, mostly built around Matt Ryan's spite. Like, I think I look at that and I say there's no way he can have 2 good games in a row because Matt Ryan is not very good. And so if he turns the ball over, obviously the Detroit defense works that out.
They're 2,200?
2,200 on DraftKings, yeah. Right. The cheap one that I originally went to was Washington, though. I mean, playing against Andy Dalton, I think that's fine. They really, this like pass rush that we were sold on earlier in the season, 8 sacks in week 1, and they've had, I believe, 8 sacks since then. 3, 6, 8, which is not good for those of you who are scoring.
And one each of the last 3 weeks, too.
Right.
So it's even gotten worse. Like I looked at that too, and I was like, Washington 2,500. Dallas turns the ball over, and they have 5.
Yeah, Zeke fumbles all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Dalton had 3 interceptions last week. Like I get that. I think if I'm going down here though, I kind of like Cleveland actually.
Okay, I see it.
2,800 at Cincinnati. They're 4,700 on DraftKings or on FanDuel.
Wow,
a huge difference. Yeah, but they just they had. It's more an anti-Cincy play. Cincy's given up 7 sacks against Baltimore, 8 sacks against Philly. So teams that rush the quarterback, they really struggled. I think that Burrow's going to throw the ball a ton, which probably works for some stats, but also works for some turnovers.
Yeah.
Cleveland should be leading in this game. I think Cleveland's going to be – you can't really quantify this, but I think they're really pissed off this week. I think they're pretty embarrassed after losing to Pittsburgh. I think you're going to get a lot of fire out of Cleveland this week going into another division rival. They're probably my favorite defense on DraftKings under 3,000. I like them more than Washington.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about previously with how bad the Eagles' offensive line is and that Carson Wentz is taking all these sacks. Coming into this week, Wentz is the only quarterback who's been sacked more than Joe Burrow.
There you go.
25 and 24. So, and the next highest was Deshaun Watson at 19. And so, yeah, that's a fun call. I don't know. I
take it back. Andy Dalton only had 2 picks last week, not 3. Sorry.
Oh. Did he fumble?
He did not fumble. They had 4 turnovers, so it was 2 Zeke and 2 Dalton. But
gotcha.
I think the $3 more is worth it for Cleveland. What about a little bit higher? I actually like the Chargers this week going against Jacksonville. They're 3,400 on DraftKings, so they're priced pretty well. They're still $1,300 less than Buffalo, who obviously everybody likes because they're playing the Jets. Sorry for the last time. But they're $1,300 less. I like the Chargers this week in a home game against Jacksonville. Minshew likes to force it a little bit. I think they work pretty well too if you wanted to save some money but not go uber cheap.
I think a little bit of that difference is that the Bills, like 4,700 is a lot for a defense.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, I like that call. Yeah, with Minshew, like you just never know. Like I feel like whenever people are like, I think I might play Minshew this week. I'm like, Good luck. I mean, that's a perfect GPP. Like, sure, if you have no problem losing most weeks and then you win with Minshew, that's fine. But
so my question for you is, since you brought it up, is he really a GPP guy?
Minshew?
Yeah.
I play. I mean, more as like he's not a cash guy, and so like you can play.
But he's had one big game all year.
Yeah, well, that's all you need. I mean, I guess
that is all you need. But
if you're,
he's just kind of good every week. I don't know. He just he's like he scores 20 points every week and moves on. But he had that one big game. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, if you get the Minshew week right and you make tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars and you lose all of the other ones, you're probably still well ahead unless you need some bankroll management lessons. But how do you not pay up for a defense playing an offensive line that may all have COVID or may not all have COVID? I mean, obviously 4,300 for Kansas City is a lot, but I mean, not Kansas City, excuse me, Tampa Bay, 3,700. Like, no,
yeah.
And Ndamukong Suh against guys who didn't practice one day this week because they may have had a deadly virus.
I will admit that when I did defenses, they weren't on the slate yet, so I hadn't looked too close at them. But that works really well. They had, the Tampa Bay defense is weird. Like I thought
really
Tampa was going to be just kind of average because I thought Brady was just kind of a guy now. But I thought the offense would be good, and I think defense wouldn't be. The defense flies all over. They drafted Devin White at linebacker, who's really good. Lavonte David was all over the place last week against Green Bay. They had 5 sacks against Rodgers. He threw 2 picks, and he never throws picks. Yeah, I think that 3,700 works pretty well there. I think that I might like them more than the Chargers now they bring that up.
Did they almost have a second touchdown last week?
Yes, the second interception was they brought it back to like the 3 or the 4.
Oh, okay. Because I really thought they had 2 touchdowns, but you're right. Yeah, they fell down at the 3.
And it was like within like 6 minutes of each other too.
Right.
Like
game
real
was
time,
over.
not game time, like real time.
Yeah.
It was like boom, boom. Yeah.
That game was over early.
And it was Green Bay was up 10-0 in that game too.
Right. Yeah, I like them. I just like
I think that makes sense.
You're basically at 3,700. You're on DraftKings. Like you're prioritizing defense at that point. Like you now have to like go into the rest of your team. Like, well, if I don't like. Now you're getting rid of Terry McLaurin so that you can play Tim Patrick, and it's like, do you really want to make that move in order to get a defense in a position that is like the most variant in fantasy sports?
I'd probably just save the $1,000 and go to Cleveland, but
right.
If you're going to go somewhere, I liked the Chargers, and I think I like Tampa Bay more. I think that's a good one. Good one you brought up there. I think that they're flying around, and you're right. I mean, we don't know if the offensive linemen are going to be. If they have COVID or they're just around it, we don't even know that yet. It sounds like aside from Trent Brown, they were just kind of around Trent Brown, so they might be fine. But you're right. I mean, not practicing all week. If they play Sunday, I mean, I still don't think we know it's going to happen. Like obviously, the key of this slate is this game is you're gonna have to watch to make sure this game gets played.
Happens,
We'll know Sunday morning though. Obviously, we'll know before deadline if they're going to actually play the game or push it back to Monday or Tuesday. But they're a defense that works really well. I think if you're going to pay up, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. If you made a mistake in your lineup and you have 3,700 for your defense, then go all in on there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I'm curious. You're good at this. What do you think Buffalo's percentage is at 4,700? Do you think? I mean, are people going to be like force them in against the Jets? It just seems like such a crazy high price.
I don't know.
Are they 10% or are they 1%? Like I'm not sure.
I mean, defenses are never that popular. I mean, their highest score this season is 8, which came against the Jets actually.
They played week 1, right?
Excuse me. Yeah, I just don't have the thought ever in my mind of like this is the defense I need to play, and so not only having that thought, but then also being like, oh, let me pay 4,700 for a defense instead of one of the 7 wide receivers that we talked about between 4,500 and 5,000. So it's like,
or you're dropping like Aaron Jones to Jerick McKinnon like that. You're making big drops to make that play.
Yeah, like if you want to do the 2v2 of Deshaun Watson and the Browns defense, or Kyle Allen and the Bills, go nuts.
Exactly. And I think I like your Tampa play enough that I would just drop 1,000 there pretty easily too. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else you want to talk about? Any other thoughts on the slate before we jump out of here on week 7?
I just hope it plays as we talked about it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think it's gonna be a fun week. I think with 3 games over 56, you're just gonna get some points. I mean, games can go under, games can get weird, but we're gonna have points this week. There are gonna be some games that are pretty high up. There are gonna be some fun games. I think we have 4 games at the 1 o'clock time too, which is 1 o'clock my time, which is nice. After having 2 games the afternoon slate was so bad last week because there were 2 games and one of them was I think it was Miami Jets Dolphins, which was over early, and then Tampa Green Bay was like the game everyone to watch, and that game was over at halftime too. Yeah. It was just a tear. Like I can't remember many afternoon slates where I literally like at halftime I was like, all right, I'm gonna go find something else to do with my Sunday afternoon. It was kind of nice in a way, but in a way, you want 4 or 5 games going on. So
yeah,
cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Friday DFS version. We always appreciate that. If you want to follow Andrew on Twitter, he is at RotoWire Andrew. I am at Scott Jenstad. If you could take a second to rate and review the podcast, we'd also appreciate that. Helps us out a lot. Helps people find the podcast, which is also a very good thing too. Other than that, hope everybody has a fantastic week 7. We're back at you next Friday morning with week 8. Take care.